Hey there teachers, welcome to Miss Estruch Teach and Tell, the podcast where every week I dive into all the tips and tricks that make teaching life so much easier. Whether you're a veteran educator, an early career teacher learning the ropes, or balancing the classroom with being a busy parent, this will help you streamline your workload and bring a bit more balance to your life. You bring the coffee and I'll bring the teach and tell. Parents' evenings don't have to be stressful. Today, I'll share my top tips for staying calm, organised, saving your voice, and making those parents' evening conversations as efficient as possible. Hey there, teachers. Welcome back to Miss Estruch Teach and Tell, your weekly coffee break to chat through practical tips, tricks, and help you make our teaching lives just that little bit easier. I'm Miss Estruch, your host, a former head of department and head of biology teacher, and who's now helping educators save time, reduce stress, and enjoy teaching even more. Today, we're tackling a biggie. Parents' evenings. Now, I don't know about you, but for me, parents' evenings used to be one of those nights I absolutely dreaded. And not because I didn't like the opportunity to talk to the parents, it was because you are, after already doing a full day's work, adding on an extra 3 hours of talking solidly when you just want to eat, relax, rest, and get on with other work you've got to do as well. So trying to cover everything with parents and guardians in just a few minutes while keeping it all organised and stress-free just felt impossible. So over the years, I developed a few different strategies, as well as with the help of people in my department, to help to transform parents' evenings, to try and make them as streamlined as possible. And I cannot wait to share these tips, tricks, and templates for free with you. So stick around, because at the end, I'll be sharing with you my free template resource that you can download to make your parents' evenings so much easier. Okay, quick coffee catch up. And if you are watching on YouTube, you'll see I've gone to my absolute massive Christmas vat, and I've actually gone for 2 chocolate digestive biscuits today. Out of interest, where does everyone stand with digestive biscuits? Which is better, chocolate covered or not? And then if you're going to go chocolate covered, you go milk or dark. I've got milk chocolate, but I actually am quite a fan of the dark chocolate covered ones. Anyway, quick coffee catch up before we dive into parents' evenings. So for me, this week, I have been doing primary school open mornings, which as a secondary school teacher, I have found this so fascinating, because I'm used to running open days as a teacher, but now seeing it from the other side as a parent and in a primary school, I do really see it in another light. And I have been absolutely blown away by the effort the teachers put in. And I've also felt so sorry for them, because a lot of the ones that I've been to have been Saturdays. A couple of them have been during the day, but on the Saturdays, I'm there thinking, these poor teachers have probably spent all of Friday getting their classrooms to look absolutely amazing and setting up all these activities. And now they're giving up their whole Saturday, and they're probably going to have to spend loads of time tidying this up. And the whole time we were there, they also were really, really friendly, amazingly positive, and you couldn't even tell if they were thinking they didn't want to be there. It didn't show at all. So a massive shout out to all the teachers that are doing open mornings, open days at the moment. It was very much appreciated, and I could see just how much effort people have put in. All right, let's get into the main content then, parents' evenings. My aim today is to help you to prepare a simple, no stress parents' evening sheet that you can use for every parents' evening meeting to guide the conversation, to already have the FAQs there with the answers, saving you time and keeping things focused and hopefully streamlined and as quick as possible. So this sheet can be edited for any subject, any year group. So by the end of this episode, it doesn't matter which year group you teach, which subject you teach, you'll be able to use this FAQ guide or parents' evening template on repeat, just editing it each time. So let's talk templates. When I created this parents' evening sheet, it's actually based on one that I'd seen one of my colleagues made at one of the schools I was teaching at over a decade ago now. And I thought that is such a straightforward idea, which has a huge impact on me as a teacher. And I couldn't believe everyone didn't do this. And that's why then when I moved to my next school, I used that idea and created this template for all staff in the science department to have. I mean, other departments could have it, but we just shared it amongst science at that point. So what do I put on this sheet? For me, because I'm a secondary school science teacher, the essentials I included were the next set of assessments. So what would be the dates of mock exams or end of year exams? What topics would come up on those exams? If it's a year 11 or a year 13, I also included the dates of the real exams with the spec at a glance so parents could see this is what comes up on each paper. So if they do have any questions around when's the next test, what's going to be on it, when's the exam, what's on the exam, I can actually start off by saying, if you've got any questions about this, you've actually got it on this sheet here, which you can take with you. Or sometimes we emailed it or sent it on Satchel 1. And that meant I didn't have to repeat myself all evening because that information's already there. And it meant for them, they didn't have to try and scribble it down. They actually had that information to take away with them, which they found so useful. Now, the other thing that I always included on this was answers to the questions that I always got asked by parents. The main generic questions that I would get asked are things like, how could my child improve? What could they be doing to revise? What's the best way to revise? So I actually had this as a list of recommended revision resources. So any revision guides, books, websites that I thought and my school thought were most effective. We had a list there. And we'd also have a link so they could just click the link and go and buy it. I also had a list of the best ways to revise, including a little paragraph explaining what active recall is compared to passive revision. So parents, if they aren't familiar with this concept, they can see that their child should be focusing on actively revising rather than just watching videos and reading the textbook. And then I gave some examples. So I said for active recall, they could be doing things like flashcards. They should be doing spaced repetition, where they, over a period of time, repeatedly look at the same content to improve their long-term memory. Now, as well as that, we also split it into, if your child is struggling to understand the information, they could do these activities. If they're struggling to remember or include key terms and key marking points in their answers, they could do these activities. If they're struggling with maths or application, they could do these activities, and so on. So we literally broke it down to what are all the typical things or areas that students struggle with, what are the solutions, here's a solution, and where it was possible to give a link, we gave a link. So for example, for us, links to the AQA past papers. So this way, I had all of the answers to the common questions I got up front, saving me time and giving parents this really helpful tool to refer to so that they can now feel more able to support their child when they go home. And what has actually been really helpful, now that we, post-COVID, still do our parents' evenings online rather than face-to-face, first of all, saving time not having to print this sheet, saving money and paper not having to print this sheet, and also by sending it to them in advance, it meant that if they had looked at it in advance, they had all of that information, all of the questions already answered. So often my parents' evening appointments, particularly if it was a student where there weren't any concerns and they were just doing well, they just needed to know what to do to improve, those parents' evening appointments sometimes were as short as 2 minutes because they'd already read this information and I'd answered all the questions in advance. Now, leading on from this, the next key thing is setting time limits per parent or student and sticking to it. Now, you are unlikely to have any control over what the time period is for the parents' evening appointment. That's decided by SLT or heads of department, so you probably don't have any control on that. But what you will have some control on is, if it's still a face-to-face appointment, is really trying to make sure you are sticking to the times. And I find it helpful to set a timer or have a sheet in front of me to keep those conversations on track. But if you are lucky enough to have online parents' evenings since COVID, that is amazing. My favourite thing is you're no longer overrunning, meaning you're not going to accidentally miss appointments or parents and students getting annoyed because they're having to wait, but also you're not going to run over beyond your time, because with our online system, when their allocated time is up, that's it. The meeting just shuts, it ends. So that has really helped parents, but also teachers, become more streamlined and efficient with their conversations. So I think most schools did have that. Some have now gone back to face-to-face, but maybe you can take some of those ideas of really emphasising the importance of, I'm really sorry, we've come to the end of our time for this appointment now. However, here is the FAQ sheet. Here's all the information to look through. If there's really anything that still isn't answered there, then ask your child to come and ask me and I can talk to them about it further. Now, there are going to be exceptions to this. There are some students who may have really difficult circumstances, or there might be things that do really have to be discussed. And if that's the case, you could ask in advance to have a double time slot for that student to allocate that, so you're not going to overrun, you're already aware. Or it may be the case that you might need to arrange a time with the head of year that you have another meeting with them. But on the whole, sticking to those times will really help you, and it will help parents and students feel less frustrated also. Okay, so this week we are going to have a confession of the... This was a great and relevant confession. During a parents' evening online appointment with just the parents, not the student present, in my defense, and yes, I do have to admit this is one of my confessions. So it was during the time where it was all online appointments. And as I said, I had parents, I had the student wasn't present because the parents actually were on their way back from work. And it just said the student's first name, it didn't say their surname, or at least I didn't see the surname. So I gave the parents feedback about who I thought their child was and how they were doing and how impressed I was. And they were amazed and said it didn't sound like their child. At this point, I laughed nervously because I thought either they're making a joke or they're being really harsh on their child, or I have just given them information about the wrong student. And at that point, I did suddenly think, I have 2 students in this class with the same first name, and they are very, very different students. And it was at that point that I glanced down at the rest of the appointments that I had, and I could see that the student I'd just been describing, I saw their name and surname later on, which then made me realise at that point, oh yeah, it doesn't sound like your child because I've just described the wrong child. So their child was a student who typically didn't do homework, would refuse to do the work, but they had been improving. So I tried to style this out and make it out to say, yeah, I know they've had their challenges in the past with homework and maybe been a bit defiant in lessons, but I really wanted to focus on the positives because they have improved. They have handed in some homework now. They are trying a lot harder, and that is how I spun it. I could not bring myself to admit that I had just described the wrong student, not because I didn't know who they were, because I didn't see their face, it was just the parents and I only had their first name. But who knows, maybe they worked it out, maybe they didn't. But in my defense, as I said, they had been improving. So I just gave it a positive spin and went for it that way. And I think I just about got away with it. Okay, let's wrap it up then with the quick win of the week. This week's tip is to make a small set of handouts with generic study tips, recommended resources or answers to common parent questions. So if you already have them ready to hand out or email ahead of time, it can answer so many questions. And this is slightly different to the parents' evening sheet, but you could copy those ideas and just turn it into different templates of a template of when the exams are, a template of how to revise, a template of these are the resources I recommend, and give those to students, whether that's electronically or literally a paper copy stuck in the book, and have it saved. So if you do have a parent contact you, I don't know what your school's rules are about parents emailing you, but if they do contact you, you've got maybe a template ready to hand to help make any conversations a lot more structured and hopefully quicker. Okay, resource roundup of the week. This week, as I said, it's all about Parents' Evening templates, making it more efficient. So you can download my free Parents' Evening template that I've already created and described here. I'm gonna put it in the show notes for you to be able to get hold of it, and in the description if you are watching on YouTube. This is a great starting point and it can be easily edited and adapted for any subject, any year group, and it's honestly been such a lifesaver. So that's a wrap for today. I hope these Parents' Evening tips bring you some much needed calm and confidence as you go into your next round of appointments, which you've probably got quite a lot coming up next term. And remember, it's all about being prepared, keeping things focused and setting boundaries so that you can have a great and productive conversation with the parents. If you did find today's episode helpful, hit the subscribe button and don't forget to leave a review on Apple Podcasts, because your feedback really is valuable to me and it helps me to reach more teachers just like you. And if you do want even more tips behind the scenes and free CPD, then I've got the link to my Instagram. You can follow me there as well. But for now, I'll see you next week. You bring the coffee and I'll bring the teach and tell.